So I want to introduce you guys to LeTrunk. LeTrunk lives in Canada, and he is crazy about this girl named Aiko. He spends a lot of time thinking about her. He buys her gifts, he gets her clothes, which she loves. She has an awesome body, by the way. And they just love spending time together. They play board games, she gets along with his parents. He kind of regards her as his best companion. So let me show you. There they are. So if you notice, Aiko's very special. She doesn't really look like most other women. And that's because she's not alive. She's a robot. And this kind of relationship, according to David Levy, looks like there we go, okay. According to David Levy, by the year 2050, this kind of relationship might be a lot more prevalent. David Levy claims by the year 2050, a lot more of us might be having sex and in love with robots. Now, I'm fascinated by this and how we might be headed into this direction and why, and is this inevitable? Now, some of you might be aware that things in America are feeling a little lonely, but take a look at the statistic. 40% of Americans claim they are lonely. The number of people who we confide in is shrinking. In fact, 25% of people claim that they have zero confidants, zero people to turn to share with, to rejoice with. Now, my friend, when she graduated from college, I remember us having this conversation. She had just moved home to Chicago. We were going to school in New York. And she realized that all her friends kind of had moved away for jobs, for college. And she was back in her hometown, kind of all alone. The few people that were still around, she didn't really drive with like she used to. And she found herself unexpectedly lonely. Now, this girl's beautiful, she's smart, she's outgoing, she's funny, but she began to think that there was something wrong with her. And that's our challenge with loneliness in America, is that we pathologize it. We think that loneliness is some kind of defect because we have this American spirit, which is awesome. It's all about freedom and independence and autonomy. But with that also comes this kind of attitude that if you can't make it alone, then maybe there's something wrong with you. But people who are lonely, research has found, aren't any less smart. They're not any less good looking. They're not any less socially astute. They're not even alone. They're not even alone. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel lonely. Now, John Cacioppo, who's one of the leading researchers on loneliness from the University of Chicago, has a new way of looking at loneliness. He talks about loneliness as a biological signal. It's just a signal to tell you what's up, to tell you, hey, it's time to go get some friends and surround yourself with people. That's all it is. It's just like hunger. When we're hungry, we get the signal we need to go out and eat. And we don't judge ourselves when we're hungry, right? We don't hate ourselves for being hungry, most of us, right? So why hate ourselves if we're lonely? We just need to go out there and hang out with some people who we care about. But we kind of pathologize it. Now, some of you may be saying, but we're more connected than ever before. How is this possible? We have so many Facebook friends. We have so many LinkedIn connections and Twitter followers, right? Well, I don't have anything against social media. I love social media. I don't even have anything against robots. I just think what's happening is we're substituting real human connection for something sociologists call social snacking. Social snacking is when we go out and we get a little bite here and there to relieve the pressure of loneliness, and it satisfies us just a little bit. So maybe we read a really awesome email, or we kind of text someone with a cute emoticon, and that works sometimes, but sometimes it can even leave us hungrier than when we started, right? We've all kind of been there. The thing is that we are social beings, and you all know this. We literally need to be in the same space, breathe the same air, see each other's eyes and each other's smile. We need to get that information exchange that only happens when we're together. And when we start exchanging care and love for one another, then watch out, because magic happens. We literally begin to synchronize. Our heartbeats, our breath, even our brain patterns begin to synchronize with one another when we are exchanging care and when we are together. But when we're together in a space, there's so much information that happens between us that's, because it's invisible, we forget that it's that important. And we just don't get that from social snacking. We don't get that. So is loneliness really that bad? Because I know life is busy, we all work really hard, and sometimes we just have to choose our battles, and we don't have as much time to spend with the people we really care about. Well, unfortunately, it is bad. There we go. Loneliness today can lead to illness tomorrow. A lot of the long-term illnesses that people are facing today may in fact be due to loneliness over time. That's why this dude, Manny, my clicker just doesn't, it's a little delayed today, so bear with me. So Manny, this guy Manny, he's over 80 years old. He's been mixing cocktails for over 55 years in a famous LA restaurant, and he refuses to retire. He refuses to retire because he's gonna miss his customers and his friends. And he is absolutely right to think that way. This was a story in NPR just a few days ago. We know that loneliness can increase your chances of premature death by 14%. I'm sorry, I know this is really depressing. We're totally gonna lift this up at the end, I promise. But this is serious stuff, right? And not only does it increase your chances of premature death, your life begins to slow down. Your sleep sucks when you're lonely. Your cortisol levels are shooting through the roof the next morning that you're lonely. It just doesn't feel good. So why are we settling for social snacks and scraps when we can really feast? Why? Well, how many of you have ever had your heart broken? Yeah. How many of you have lost someone that you love? How many of you have ever felt like an outsider looking in? Yeah, we've all been there. It's risky to love. It is risky to put yourself out there. And it's because of that risk that we've slowly been taking control back to kind of avoid it. And things have been making themselves even easier for us to avoid that risk. And I'm gonna tell you about 3 drivers that have been slowly pulling us apart for over half a century. Now, before I do that, I just wanna say, I know, by the way, that people can be the bane of your existence as well, right? Like, they can drive you crazy, they can like make you wanna pull your hair out, and it's really hard sometimes to deal with people, right? But the truth is that people are what make our life worth living. Research has found that the #1 predictor of our happiness is our relationships. So if that's true, then loneliness can be the most devastating experience that we have as humans. And right now we're facing an epidemic. And here's why. So there's three main drivers which I found. Spaces, our screens, and our sharing, our digital sharing. So when it comes to our spaces, let's go clicker. When it comes to our spaces, since the early mid-20th century, we've experienced this urban sprawl. We've had some poor planning that's pulled us apart. It's made it really hard for us to bump into each other on the street. In fact, I could go days without seeing my neighbors growing up in the suburbs. And we've begun to miss something called the third place. The third place is neither home, neither work. It's this place where you meet, you exchange ideas, you spontaneously connect, things just happen. Like church, that happens in church or synagogues or in bars or in Starbucks or wherever. But that's going away. And what happens is we get stuck in our homes or in our jobs. And when we're there, we get glued to our screens. Come on. Okay. We get glued to our screens. We're seduced by our screens. Robert Putnam, political scientist at Harvard, found that, thank you so much, found that 40% of the diminishment in community and social activism is due to our being glued to the television since the 1950s. But what's happening now? We are walking around with our screens everywhere we go, even when we're in a Starbucks, which is like a third place anyway. This is like outside my office. So we're looking at our screens and not the world around us. And then when we're doing that, what's happening is that we want to connect, so we'll tweet something or we'll post a status. And when we do that, when we share digitally, what we're doing is we're editing, we're curating, we're highlighting, we're formatting, cropping, filtering, maybe even deleting parts of our lives that we share with others. And so the experience, oops, I don't think this clicker's, okay, here we go. So the experience that we have, and I think this quote captures it best, is the reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. Right? Isn't that how it feels? So, come on, clicker, there we go. So there's lots of solutions to this problem, to the loneliness epidemic, but there's one that we are not talking about. It's one that's non-digital. It's one that we are wired to do, intrinsically motivated to do from birth until death. It's really fun. It's a resource that's replenishable. And it is play. There we go. Why is play the answer to something as serious as the loneliness epidemic? Because play is literally about taking risks. It's about being in the moment, being so in the moment that you forget your worries and your insecurities. It is the perfect antidote to helping us deal with the vulnerability of putting ourselves out there, because that's why we've been avoiding one another. So in a situation like this, it could be the perfect lubricant to start a conversation. Now, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I went back to grad school to study play, and I got a master's in applied positive psychology. And I ended up founding a company where what we do is we design play. And we design play for companies like Google and Johnson & Johnson and Columbia University. And what I got to witness is the power of play, connecting people, helping them see things that they weren't seeing before. But I have to admit, doing play for a living, it's still a mystery for me. And that's because there's just not enough research on play in adults. And there's also, it's just the nature of play. The nature of play is mysterious. But here's what I can tell you. No matter what we do at WOOPAAH, as you can see, we blindfold people, we splash them around in paint. We do a lot of stuff. But what I've learned after all my experiences is that it's really not about what you do. It's about who you are in the moment. Play is not about activity. It is about being. It is about your mindset. So what I'm gonna do is teach you how to get into that mindset. And by the way, you can do it anytime, anywhere. You don't even have to be in a good mood. You don't even have to be in zippity-doo-dah land to play. In fact, my favorite places to apply play are when you are feeling dark and heavy. That is when I love to apply play. So I'm gonna tell you about how I and my husband actually apply play when we're in a big disagreement, because that really helps us. It carries us through, and it helps us arrive at a place we wouldn't have been at otherwise, and it really helps us grow together. So there's 4 conditions to play. The first is you want to give yourself permission to play. You need to set that intention to play. We forget to even do that, right? And what does that look like? What's that script like? Well, instead of saying, oh my God, I have to have this conversation, it's like, wow, I get to have this conversation. I get to do this. Instead of seeing something as a drag or as an obligation, I see it as an opportunity or an adventure I get to embark on. The next thing you want to do is you want to lose judgment and any expectations you have of what's about to happen. That's really essential. So instead of saying, this is going to suck, or maybe this is going to be awesome, I just say, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's about to happen. So you leave yourself open. You notice how just that tiny shift in perspective opens you up to all sorts of possibilities. The third condition is you want to acknowledge the present moment. You want to be in the moment. That's essential for play. So instead of when will this be over, you want to say, I'm noticing that I'm nervous. You are so in the moment that you can notice what is happening for you. Instead of thinking about the past or the future, you're just right here, whatever that is. And lastly, you want to say yes to it all. If anybody plays or does improv, you know this is like the foundational rule. You want to say yes. So if my husband tells me something, I don't reject it, I don't deny it, I don't resist it. I just say yes and we build on it, and we discover things together, and we come to solutions together. So we know that play is a biological function that really helps us navigate a changing world. We know, for example, with cats, when we take play away from cats, they can still hunt like cats, they still look like cats, but they don't know foe from friend. And that's really what happens very similarly to us. Play helps us make sense of our changing world, which is why kids need to do it. But our world keeps changing, even when we grow up. So why do we stop playing, right? So here's what I want to leave you with. Play. You know how to play. You know how to deal with this loneliness epidemic. It is within you. I am just here to remind you to play with your play instincts, to see where they get you, see how you can use them in new ways. Rediscover what it is that makes you come alive. Rediscover where it is that you can find new joy or feeling like you're on the edge. Because it is that instinct which will help you navigate the risk of being together, the fear of being vulnerable. And that, my friends, is what will catapult you into leading the life that's worth living. Thank you.